Are we going to have any more light up here?
Kathy needs more light. Can't hear
Oh, you
through your
can't hear?
mask.
Okay. You can't hear me?
So I'll bring out more light, but just realize as I bring it up, it's going to start killing the screen.
Oh, okay, all right.
All right, it looks like it's 6 o'clock. I will call this meeting to order. Please join me in a moment of silent prayer or reflection. Carrie, will you call the roll, please?
Nicole Cohen,
Here.
Roxana Ayar,
Here.
John Maston, Kathy Cox,
Here?
Lisa Roman,
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have two calls to the public. The first is from Marcia Cox. It is on the topic of communication with and from the public.
Are the public comment microphones on?
Yes, they are.
Can't hear you.
Where's this one?
Go ahead.
Hello, there it is. Good evening, members of the board. Stand back here a little bit further. My name is Marcia Cox, and I wanted to start off first by apologizing for some of my reactions from last week's meeting. I think it was a new experience for all of us getting into this arena, and we really didn't have any idea of what to expect or what was to be expected of us. Typically, in our previous meetings at the school board, governing board office at the district, we knew that we could come up and stand at the mic, raise our hand, come to the podium, the microphone, and be heard. And I think that I, for one, did not know what to expect, and my emotions got the better of me, so I'm going to personally apologize for any offenses that I threw out there, and I'll leave it at that. My bigger concern, I guess, is just to make sure, and just to bring that up, that historically, I've been here 30 years, and we've always had the opportunity to be able to have a discourse and conversation on any agenda item and come to a microphone and have a question raised on any agenda item that our school board was presenting to us, whether it's a call to a public or an item that was on the agenda. And I hope that we will still be allowed to do that. My suggestion is to allow us, and maybe we get direction from the board, to actually ask us to come to the microphone so that we do have a chance to voice the opinion from the parents and from the community, and just the same way that we did. Hopefully, eventually we'll get back to the boardroom, but if not, we have microphones, and hopefully we'll continue to be able to do that. Because I do think it's important that you are aware of what the community has to say, and we do have opinions, and we would like to be heard, and we'd like to have those opinions expressed and have you take them into consideration. As far as having our opinions taken under consideration, I would like to make a suggestion that because the board packet and the information in that board packet is public record, I would like to make the suggestion that the packet become public record on the website before the meeting actually starts, so that the community and the parents can actually see what's going to be discussed, and so that we're better prepared to have a conversation with the board and amongst each other, because having the information that's presented to us and not knowing what's there can become quite disconcerting. And if it becomes public record or you send a copy of the board packet to the newspaper, why can't the public see that? So that's just a recommendation, a suggestion.
I will address that just briefly. So we have a procedure in place for how the packet is posted on the website in place. So you're asking for maybe a longer period prior to the meeting of it being publicly available?
I think
Was that
she's
your request?
asking for the packet that goes to the newspaper to be available to the public.
Okay.
And that would be everything that we look at tonight, that packet, instead of just the agenda with the titles.
Is that correct? Does that sum up your request? Okay. We can talk about that. That's okay. I got the answer to my question. Thank you. Okay, and our next call to the public is from Corey Schnorr, and he is speaking about parent-teacher surveys from last meeting.
So the last meeting we had, we took a parent survey, teacher survey, and correct me if I'm wrong, that came back 75% wanted to go back to school, while 25% didn't, right?
Those were roughly the numbers, yes.
Okay, since when do we focus on the minority and not the majority? The majority of our teachers and our parents have spoken up and want to go back to school. The rest of this country has gone back to work, and they're doing it. So why should we cater to 25% that don't want to go back to work or whatever the reason is? Now, if they have underlying health conditions, I get that. There's something we could do for them or whatever, but from the majority of it, the parents and the teachers have spoken out. We want to go back to school full time. So why take a survey and put the numbers out there and show that's what we want to do, but we don't do it? Now, about 2 years ago, we had a bond and override pass. The first time it didn't pass. Second time, the school board came after all the parents and everybody in this community passed a bond and override. So that vote counted then. Why doesn't this vote count now? And I know you guys aren't set up to deal with conditions like this, but the majority of people have spoken up. Now it's your job to do what we ask you to do to get our kids back into school. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Who do you guys work for? Or who do you represent?
Just so you understand, you may ask us questions, but we may choose not to answer those questions.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. You guys represent the parents in this community, the teachers, and our kids, correct? So if you represent them, and we came back with those numbers, you're not representing us. You took your vote to go against that. That's not how this works. Yeah, and the taxpayers.
May I speak to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things we had not anticipated would be that 300 children, the parents of 300 children decided not to send them back to school. I think all along we had thought when it was time to go back to school, we would all go back to school. We did not realize that many parents were going to keep their kids home, and we have to service those children. So what we have right now are teachers doing morning and afternoon sessions, and then they're going home and preparing distance learning, which is totally different from preparing for the classroom, for the number of students they have in their classes. Some might have 1 or 2, some might have 10, and they have to do that. So right now it's not feasible, and because the parents chose not to do that. And the other thing is, with the high school starting and middle school, we are anticipating we're going to have a large percentage of parents who do not choose to send their kids back to school. And here's the complicating thing about that. You can get a sub to teach 4th grade, but we don't have a sub for trigonometry. We don't have a sub for physics. We don't have a sub for Spanish. I mean, we don't have good answers.
I get the logistics of the teachers. I get that part, and that's something that we'd have to work and figure out. But for those parents that don't want to send their kids back, that's the minority. That's not the majority. The majority has spoken up. We want to go back full time. Now, it's not fair to these teachers too either, because they're working more. They're getting the same pay, And they're working more hours and dealing with more. And it's not fair to them. It's not fair to our kids. So just since when in this country do we favor the minority? It's been like that. You know, it's just the saying, every kid gets a trophy. Well, it's showing now. The minority is winning, and the majority voted. Our kids should be back to school, our parents full-time, and that minority, I'm sorry, I have to figure out something that works for them. It's not fair. If it was like a 60-50 vote, or if it was 50-50, I get it. But 75% said they want to go back full-time, teachers and students. And we chose to not look at those numbers. Now there's logistics to figure out, for sure, of teachers and all that. I get all that. But that's your job. We voted. The parents and the teachers spoke up, came forward to you. Now your job, again, you guys didn't sign up for this. This is all new. But we need to come together and figure out a way to take care of that 75%. That's all I got to say.
Dr. Stone, if you have a brief answer that you'd like to give?
Just for me to clarify a couple of minutes, we did have about 75% of our teachers say they wanted to come back. Many of them saying they would like to go to hybrid first, just to kind of see how these logistics play out and how that works as a total community, as well as many of our parents who reported that they wanted to come back. There were parents who also said we prefer the hybrid model first because we want to see how this impacts our kids and our families going forward. I will tell you that it's actually gone pretty well in all of our schools, and I agree with you wholeheartedly that teachers are working so hard and over and above what they thought they were going to have to do to really facilitate working with our kids who have chosen to come to school, and we have a little over 400 who have chosen the distance learning platform. And during that, what we're hearing from a lot of parents is the reason they're choosing distance learning right now is they want to see how these 3 weeks kind of go so they can be ready to come back. And our teachers are more than looking forward now as they've started to have kids in their class and realize what that interaction can be, and we have really good systems in place. They're much more comfortable and ready to come back full time.
I get, and one of my concerns is I've heard there's some high school teachers that are voicing their concern about all this. And at the end of the day, this country's gone back to work. I'm sorry, but the habit and in and out is hiring. And if you choose not to work or want to go back to work, there's places that will hire. This country is going back to work. And basically, we shouldn't have the few that think that way or want to do that hold our kids hostage, just pretty much. Because just like Nicole was saying, we're going to come into flu season come January.
Mr. Schnorr, I would ask you to wrap up your comments because
Okay.
your time has expired. If you have one final, if that was the end of your sentence, that's fine.
You do recognize that our teachers who are doing distance learning are working, that it's been a whole new experience for them. You do recognize they are working now, don't you? I'm sure you do.
Just as a point of order, I'm sorry, Mrs. Cox, we can't have the back and forth
Okay.
from the dais. Okay. Moving on to 4.1, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion on 4.1?
I move we accept 4.1 as presented.
I second.
Terry?
Tatiana Alia,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Lisa Roman,
Yes. Moving on to item 5.1, it's the second presentation and review of revised policies, and this is presented by Dr. Stone.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. It is recommended that the board approve the second presentation of the revised policies listed below per Arizona School Boards Association Policy Services Advisory for July 2020. Policy Advisory number 673, IHA Basic Instructional Program, IHA-ARS 1-319 specifies that September 25th in each year shall be observed as Sandra Day O'Connor Civic Celebration Day, which is not a legal holiday. If Sandra Day O'Connor Civic Celebration Day falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or other day when a public school is not in session, the preceding or following school day shall be observed in the public school as the holiday. ARS 15-710.01 adds that on Sandra Day O'Connor Civic Celebration Day, each public school in this state shall dedicate the majority of the school day to civics education. And also Policy Advisory number 675KB, Parent Involvement in Education. KB Senate Bill 1061 has added Section 15-249 to the statutes, which states access to the Arizona DOE's statutory handbook of parental rights be prominently posted on a publicly accessible portion of the district website. There have been no changes to these policies since the first reading, August 18th, 2020.
Do I have a motion on item 5.1?
I move that we postpone item 5.1 in order to align it to policies IHA-E and IA, which is our instructional goals and objectives.
I second.
Okay, discussion or questions?
So I had talked with Dr. Stone. I didn't read this during the last meeting just because it was the first read and I just didn't get to it. But as I went through 5.1, both these policies could use a lot of cleaning up. There's a lot of duplicate information. It's not easy to read. There's actually some missing information on the KB. I want to make it as clear as possible for the public, and I had expressed all my concerns with Dr. Stone about it when I met with her yesterday, and she did not disagree. So I would just like to postpone it so there's an opportunity to clean up the language and get rid of the duplicates and align it better.
So postpone it for October's meeting, assuming that the cleanups can happen before then?
Yeah,
Okay.
it doesn't go into effect, either one of the policies, until January of 2021, so it won't hold anybody up.
Dr. Stone, did you have any additional information?
No, we're happy to review and clean up the specific sections, titling some things so they're more clear for the public and taking out any duplicates.
Any other further questions or discussion?
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Archana Aliyar,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Lisa Roman,
Yes. 6.1. Let me make sure I have the right.
It's separate.
That's the insert.
I know.
It was a late edition.
6.1 is the approval of Logicalis for intercom bells and clocks. Before we begin on this item, I would like to ask our fellow board members if it would be okay to move 6.4 to directly follow 6.1 because they're presented by the same company. Yes, would that be okay?
That makes sense.
Okay. Okay, so 6.1 is the approval of Logicalis for intercom bells and clocks.
Madam President and Governing Board, it is recommended that the Governing Board approve Logicalis to complete the work outlined in the contract and statement of work. Payment to Logicalis for the district-wide replacement of bell, intercom, and clock infrastructure will not exceed $400,000. During planning for the 2017 and 2020 bond issuance, funding for replacement for bell, intercom, and clock systems were approved. Currently, the majority of the intercom equipment in place at LHUSD was installed over 20 years ago and needs replacement. LHUSD currently has an unsupportable intercom system that is in need of modernization. Intercom functions at 2 locations have reached a state of failure. This project was slated to be staggered and start after phones, but we're moving this up this request due to the need for a functional system. Some of the concerns that will be rectified: several sites cannot do an all page from desk phones to the overhead speakers due to failed components that are no longer available. This upgrade will resolve intercom system failures that reside in the main console. Service calls to the current vendor to fix even minor items average around $3,000 for a single trip and often take several months to complete. The new system will be warranted for 5 years with an optional service plan after 5 years. Changes to the bell and intercom system require significant amounts of time due to its complexity. Bells and intercoms can now be managed online. Schedules can be saved and made to go live based on the school calendar. The district currently has various brands and models, adding to the difficulty in management. The new system will be a unified district-wide platform, reducing downtime and expensive emergency repairs. The tech department does not have spare or replacement parts. New and used parts are unavailable via suppliers and online. The scope of work includes project implementation, intercom, appliance, and hardware installation for all sites, global system configuration, and zone page configurations. Validation, system cutover, save and test configurations, execution of test plan. Project management, Logicalis project manager will plan, execute, monitor, control project performance, and close project. Costs, funding. The current bond issuance provides funding for a district-wide replacement. The total project cost will not exceed $400,000. LHUSD had $671,000 of bond funds available toward this project. Logicalis was able to provide a lower-cost, high-quality solution with Informacast and Bogan due to their lower hardware licensing and maintenance pricing structures. 3 contracted vendors showed interest in submitting a proposal. Of those, 2 submitted a quote. The Logicalis proposal matched our needs by way of a vendor product and price comparison. Logicalis also is on an IGPA contract. The project would begin at the earliest date the vendor is available with the goal completion by the end of the school year.
Do I have a motion on item 6.1?
I move that we approve 6.1 as presented.
I second.
And then I have just a very quick presentation, just to show some visuals, and then Logicalis is here. So if Aggie, if you'll click. So just some of the things that I just went through. Emergency paging is not working. The phone to intercom system is not working. It requires manual paging from the main console. The bell scheduling requires repeated manual entry, and it may not hold. And so I'll show you the large towers that they're doing that at in just a second. The majority of sites are in a various state of component failure. Parts are no longer available. And just so everybody knows, the classroom clock replacements, where we do have to make clock replacements, will be analog. So this is an example of the intercom, one of the intercom consoles. And so you can see it's just been repaired and repaired and repaired over time. And then you'll click again. So this is the size of our intercom towers. So they are huge and they require manual settings. And so it will now be a much smaller space. And then I'll wait for phones till the next one. So if you have any questions.
Okay, so does this agreement also include software updates through a certain time period? I'm sorry, where are our Logicalis representatives?
I'll let Logicalis.
Yes, okay, I'm sorry. Does the agreement provide updates throughout a certain time frame?
That's good for 60 months, so it'll be 5 years of support.
I think that was all, that was my only question. Any other questions?
I just want to clarify, I believe, Mrs. Festa, you said that it would be completed by the end of this school year. I believe it says here, the end of 2021.
The 2021 school year.
Oh, okay, all right. So that would be then June of next year, that early?
Go ahead, yes, please.
Yeah, so at this point right now, if we were,
Will you use the microphone?
Test, right, technical stuff.
Can you say your name just so that?
My name's Robert Lundblade. I'm the account manager for Lake Havasu Unified School District and represent Logicalis. So I've been with Logicalis for over 5 years now. Been in the industry as providing operations and sales for school districts for, well, here in Arizona for 14 years, but previous to that I was lived and worked in Alaska as a technician for 12 years. So I was on the operations side before I ever came to this, but that's just a little background on me. So in terms of support and maintenance, you're going to be covered for 5 years. And if we are able to receive purchase orders, and obviously in a timely manner, I mean, if we were to get them in March or April of next year, meeting that timeline might be kind of difficult. But if we get them currently right now, I don't foresee any problem with us being able to finish the project well before the June 30 end of the fiscal.
I have to admit, my first reaction when I heard that it would be nearly $400,000 for phones was kind of to take a big gulp. But I do realize that, that this also encompasses our emergency systems and makes our schools safer.
Right, there's actually two projects. You have your phone system upgrade, which is one part of the project that we quoted, and then we also quoted the Informacast paging and mass notification system in conjunction with the phone system. So we provided two quotes.
I think something that's really important to look at, and the pricing that we had in the bond, which was set out 4 years ago, was $670,000. So that was what we thought our cost would be 4 years ago. So the work that the tech department did with LHUSD to be able to reuse equipment and not just be wasteful says a lot, because we're coming in at $400,000. So we're saving almost $300,000 over what we thought we were going to spend.
Thank you for your frugality on that.
That would be Sean's
Yep.
frugality.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Okay, I think that's it on this one.
Good for now?
Thank you.
All right.
Yes.
Archiana Alliar,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes?
Lisa Roman,
Yes. And then item 6.2 is the approval for Logicalis for phone upgrades as recommended.
It is recommended that governing board approve Logicalis to complete the work outlined in the contract and statement of work. Payment to Logicalis for the district-wide replacement of phones and phone infrastructure will not exceed $350,000. During the planning for the 2017 and 2020 bond issuance, funding for a replacement phone system was approved. Currently, the majority of the phone equipment in place at LHUSD was installed over 20 years ago is in need of a replacement. LHUSD currently has an unsupported phone system and mass communication system in need of modernization. Some concerns that will be rectified. Multiple sites cannot page from their phone to the intercom system, and replacement parts are unavailable. The upgrade will connect the phone system to the intercom system, which is now being installed. A vast majority of the phone bases have burnt-out LED screens. New phones will be installed in all locations. Service calls to the current vendor to fix even minor items average around $3,000 for a single trip and often take several months to commit. Phones will be warranted for 5 years with an optional service plan after those 5 years. Changes to the phone system require a significant amount of time due to the complexity and requires a specialist. Phones can now be managed from a central location. The district currently has 2 different brands and 3 models, making it more difficult to manage. Voice phones will be used with a unified district-wide platform that can leverage VoIP, allowing for better phone service provider selection. The tech department is out of spare parts or replacement parts. Items are difficult to locate online. This work will include data gathering, gather, review, and validate project implementation, implement voice appliance and hardware installation, global phone system configuration, trunk call routing, and extension configuration, call feature configuration, log and report configuration, phone installation, validate, system cutover, save and test configurations, execute, test a plan. Project management, Logicalis project manager will plan work breakdown, structure, execute, monitor, and controlling project performance, close project. The current bond issuance provides funding for a district-wide replacement. The total project cost will not exceed $350,000. LHUSD has $650,000 of bond funds available to use for this project. Logicalis was able to provide a low-cost, high-quality solution with Voice due to their lower hardware licensing and maintenance pricing structures. 3 vendors submitted proposals. The Logicalis proposal matched our needs by way of vendor product and price comparison. Vendors were scored and Logicalis was selected. Logicalis is on an MESC contract. The project will begin at the earliest date the vendor is available with a goal of completion by the end of the 2021 school year.
Do I have a motion on item 6.4?
I move we approve 6.2 as presented.
so it stays 6.4.
I know, but we moved it to 6.2,
We
right?
just moved it.
We just moved the order, but it's still labeled
Okay,
6.4.
6.4 as presented.
Thank you.
Second?
Okay, discussion or questions?
I have a
This-
question.
Oh.
Were you going to ask a question?
Well, I was just going to confirm out, I already confirmed this, but this is the point I was concerned about. So if a classroom calls 911 because there's an emergency, our 911 operator will then be able to identify the classroom they came from. And that was,
Our original intent.
that was our original intent. That's the most important feature for me
Correct.
out of the system.
And I have a quick presentation, and there's actually another important safety feature. Currently, all of our phones are hung by the doors. And so while that might not seem like a big deal, there's a couple of issues with that, the ones in teachers' rooms. Number one, if I'm a teacher and I need to call parents and there's a phone by a door and I'm not by my computer where I'm looking at students' grades, it's not the place where I want to call. So it's not a useful place. And also, if I'm calling in place of an emergency, most of our doors have windows. I'm putting myself in the line of being seen. And so we're moving our phones so they'll now be on teachers' desks because they're going to be in line with the computer. They're using that same hardware. So that is a really important move, both from a practical standpoint, but also from a safety standpoint. Because that was a really hard thing. We were calling in to say our students were safe, they were in a corner, but here we were in full view. But so the other thing is the phones are now going to be in line with our intercom system. Right now they're two separate systems, so it will all be one system. Aggie, will you click? So you can see most of our phone screens look like that. Probably can't see it in the audience, but you can't see anything, so you have no idea who's calling you. And so while that's probably not such a big deal for a teacher, but that is like a nice surprise every once in a while when I answer my phone. And so all of our new phones will go to that. This is like the biggest shift. So what's on the left is what currently is going to be what's on the right. So that is a huge space saver. All those things are hanging out in all of our buildings, and now it's just going to be that little nice white box that will be in our network racks. And I think that's it. There might be one more. Nope, that's it. So I don't know if you have any questions for Logicalis. Tech team.
I have a question for you. When we call a technician, how far away is he? Is that Vegas or Phoenix? And what will the response time be? Rural school districts always have an issue with that.
Yeah, so in this particular case, once the phone system has been installed, there is a period of time that the system will be warrantied by Logicalis. We are located in Phoenix, Arizona, so you understand the drive time there. This does not come with any managed service agreement of any kind that way. I mean, those are options that the school district has, but again, the phone system, like the InformaCast system, also comes with a 5-year warranty and support. So typically, we don't run into any hard failures. Most of the issues that we have come during the implementation process, and we usually resolve all those issues long before we complete the project. So these projects are not done overnight. I mean, it takes time and thought, and procedures have to be followed, and therefore we don't really have a lot of failure, which is a good thing. But we are close, and we do provide our customers, our school districts, with the option to place an open purchase order, basically for ad hoc purposes and support reasons, that we would house or keep a purchase order on file for you folks if you ran into a situation where something failed that was outside of the support window, and we could respond that way, and we would use that for those purposes. And we do that for many, many of our school districts across the state.
Have you talked to our school district about that? Have you brought that up with our school district?
I think so. I've brought that up before, yeah.
Can I expand on that a
Yeah,
bit?
go ahead.
I'd also like to include that FortiVoice itself provides 24/7 support, phone support, so that way if the phone stops ringing or whatever, you can contact FortiVoice. They can log into the system, go in and see that everything's configured right, that the phone's been put in, the extension's been assigned, things like that. So there is 24/7 support provided by FortiVoice, and the majority of issues can be taken care of remotely. So we don't have to actually send someone out.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Oh, I'm sorry, did you have something further to say?
No, that was it.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other further discussion or questions from our board? Okay.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Archiana Alliar,
Yes.
Lisa Roman,
Yes. As we were talking, I apologize for this, but I realized that I never recognized our visitors, and we normally hear from our Lake Havasu City Education Association. I forgot to call on Mrs. Nowakowski, so I will give her the option if she would like to speak now or after our new business items. It's whichever preference you would. So that was reminder to vote and
Get registered.
get registered.
I just reminding everybody of dates. We have new teachers that are new to the state, and so we want to make sure that we get them the dates and make sure they know that Election Day is November 3rd, and the deadline to register is October 5th.
Thank you, and I apologize for overlooking you earlier. Okay. Item 6.2 is the discussion and possible action regarding all anti-racism curriculum, including Black Lives Matter and the 1619 Project, and this is presented by Nicole Cohen.
Thank you. So this is not a new subject for our school district. It's been around for a bit. So I wanted to give a little context for those that are that have not heard of it before, or for those that are viewing, and especially for all of those constituents that think that I'm trying to bring in 1619 into our community. While I did not return an email to the newspaper, they could have very easily looked at my action item and deducted what I was trying to do. But instead, they kind of stirred the pot, so that's unfortunate. And I'm still waiting for my article to be printed on the PCR testing. But anyways, I digress.
Why didn't you answer their question when they reached out to you?
Because I'm not always available to answer somebody's questions when I've gone through all the effort to make it very clear from start to finish. And they have access to this, and I think that's what Ms. Cox was saying. It would be nice if everybody had access to it before. Anyways, so a little bit of historical context. In 2014, when I ran for the board, I ran against Common Core and I ran against the $67.4 million bond. And that was not very popular within the school district. When I got on the board, I then began to work for the 2016 bond and an override. And of course, that was passed, and I figured after we pass a bond and an override and we get this conservative community to come together and support our teachers and support our schools and clean things up and be very transparent about everything we're doing, good, bad, or indifferent, well, then we can turn our focus to what we're actually teaching our students. And nobody would be defensive about that, because after all, everybody is trained through the same teacher colleges, so they wouldn't take it personal. But that has not been the case. So in 2016, actually the day of the election, we had quite an uproar at our school district about some racial hostility. And then the board was approached by an ASU professor who charged us, and this was at our 11/15/2016 meeting, right after we passed our bond and override, and he charged our board with, or our school district, the administrators were ignoring racial hostility on our campuses. There was a lack of diversity in our staff. There was no diversity training in our staff, and that minority students were disproportionately impacted by the district's failure to address cultural identification. This is just a little backdrop.
And I will ask you to limit your presentation, or your initial presentation, to what is printed in the board packet. And then any extra remarks that you would like to make can be done during discussion. Please stick
So
to
now I have
please-
to rearrange my whole presentation to suit you?
Please stick to the agenda item.
I
This is
am
your
sticking
agenda
to the
item.
agenda item. This is all relevant. You really need to, this is so outrageous. So there was a lot of meetings that took place, another member of the board here, and myself, a lot of research that was done. Then the board again was approached, and doubled down with additional charges of implicit bias, a need for an action plan, and then we were assured that our then superintendent would face challenges and the road down the path of race and diversity would be extremely difficult and quite tumultuous.
Point of order, I would like you to stick to the agenda item
This
as
is
written.
my agenda, this is
Yes.
my agenda item.
This is what you submitted that you would like to present. Please stick to this, and then you can come back to this. You will have plenty of time during the discussion time.
Okay.
That
Well,
that
I'm
is
not
how
going to read my agenda item, it's up there.
this is how meetings are properly conducted.
I was president for a year, I ran the board for a year, and I never had one single problem on the board, ever.
I'm president this year, and we
I
are
know.
sticking to the agenda as presented.
I know. Okay, so I'm not going to read my agenda item. We did receive a letter that is very similar to the issues that we had in 2016 and 2017. And if we could go ahead and just roll tape, so to speak, on...
I'm sorry, what?
On the video.
What video?
Are you going to control my every word that comes out of my mouth?
I would like to know which video you intend to show prior to you showing it.
I don't need your permission. This is my action item. You are running the meeting. You don't control my words, my thoughts, my presentation. You're
Are you
out
going
of
to present?
order.
No, I'm not. You are. Are you going to present the video that you referenced here, the UncleTom.com documentary?
No, I'm not.
So you're going to present a video that is not included on the agenda item that you submitted, correct?
I am presenting, I'm trying to do my presentation, and you're doing your darndest to stop it.
I would like it to proceed properly. So this is my suggestion. If you would like to show a video that has not been prior submitted as part of your agenda item,
It was, you
I don't
can't
see it
submit a
here.
video. You cannot submit a video
you
in
don't list a
writing.
link to it or a reference to it, do you?
Well, I did not, I didn't know that I had rules that I had to follow. I thought this
We
was
all have
my-
rules that we have to follow.
No.
Now, this is what I would suggest.
I
If
have
you-
already sent this to the superintendent. I have already sent this.
Is that true?
Yes, we did receive it today.
I'm sorry?
We did receive the video today to
Okay.
be played for the agenda item this evening.
How long is the video?
It's 5 minutes.
Do you have a copyright release to show it at a public meeting?
I am, it's a public video, yes. I mean, it's totally public.
Do you have a copyright release?
I don't need a copyright release. It's a public video. It's a free public video.
I don't know that because I don't even know which video that you're going to show.
It is a Prager University video, and I am really positive that Dennis Prager and everybody at Prager University will not object to me using it. They put these videos and study guides and sources available on their public website in order for school districts and students to be able to view these videos, although YouTube is doing their darndest to shut that down. This is not inappropriate. I'm not out of line. You're out of line. We need to have a discussion, but we can't do that when somebody wants to control your speech.
Okay, so
First
this
Amendment.
this is what I suggest. I do not know that it is legal to show a
It is
video.
legal.
I'm not taking your word for it. I want to consult with an attorney. We can have an executive session very briefly
Oh, my
and
goodness.
consult with our attorney. I want to have a consultation with our legal counsel prior, unless our superintendent has personal knowledge that this has
It
been
is a
cleared
public
with an attorney.
video on a website that anyone can
Yes.
access, so I don't think you're having any issues with copyright.
However, I would like to make the point that it would have been nice for the board to have viewed it before the meeting, just as Mrs. Cox asked, that the public get to view it. The board itself has not seen this. And I wish that would have been easy for you to have sent us a link.
That's true, why didn't you?
It's a 5, because I just came to, I actually, I actually had somebody send me this speech, and I thought it was appropriate to play the video because, and it's actually a teacher of mine, sent me the speech and said, I think this would be appropriate for the conversation. And I said, that's so funny you sent me the speech because this is what our mission statement is founded on.
Okay, and you couldn't have forwarded that to the other board members prior? Or sent it to Terry and asked her to forward it to us?
It's not that controversial. You're making a really big deal out of nothing.
I agree with Lisa. I don't think we want to see a video which we don't know what it's going to tell us.
I will allow it with under some objections and some instructions for next time. If a video is going to be shown during this meeting, I want to know about it prior to the meeting. You have not stuck to the agenda item. This is your agenda item that you could have created in any way that you wanted to, and you chose to deliberately not present it the way that it's written. The other thing, nope, I'm not done. The other thing is that I want our board to agree in the future to limit, 5 minutes actually sounds like a reasonable length for a video, but what if you had wanted to show, say, a 30-minute video? I think our board needs to set some parameters on the length of video that we show. And the other thing that I want to say before this video is shown is that this is the product and it's being shown at your...
This is the sole opinion of Nicole Cohen,
It is.
not
It does
the
not
board.
reflect the board.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Now you may roll tape.
Nicole, I'm working on it.
No problem.
It froze up here. It's not
That's
your computer,
okay.
it's the computer.
Thank you. Tell them thank you very much.
Maybe I could have permission to continue with the context of my...
Yes, please speak well.
Yes, I am.
We haven't. Yes, you will.
Absolutely. There we go.
If every high school principal gave the following speech, America would be a much better place. To the students and faculty of our high school, I am your new principal and honored to be so. There is no greater calling than to teach young people. I would like to apprise you of some important changes coming to our school. First, this school will no longer honor race or ethnicity. I could not care less if you are black, brown, red, yellow, or white. I could not care less if your origins are African, European, Latin American, or Asian, or if your ancestors arrived here on the Mayflower or on slave ships. The only identity this school will recognize is your individual identity, your character, your scholarship, your humanity. And the only national identity this school will recognize is American. This is an American public school, and American public schools were created to make better Americans. If you wish to affirm here an ethnic or racial identity or a national identity other than American, you will have to attend another school. This includes after-school clubs. I will not authorize clubs that divide students based on identities such as race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or whatever else may become in vogue in our society. Those clubs cultivate narcissism, an unhealthy preoccupation with the self, while the purpose of education is to get you to think beyond yourself. The school's clubs will be based on interests and passions, clubs that transport you to the wonders and glories of art, music, astronomy, languages you do not already speak, and more. If the only extracurricular activities you can imagine being interested in are those based on ethnicity, race, or sexual identity, that means that little outside of yourself really interests you. Second, I do not care whether English is your native language. My only interest in terms of language is that you leave this school speaking and writing English as fluently as possible. The English language has united America's citizens for over 200 years, and it will unite us at this school. Furthermore, I would be remiss in my duty to ensure that you will be prepared to successfully compete in the job market if you leave this school without excellent English language skills. We will learn other languages here. It's deplorable that most Americans only speak English. But if you want classes taught in your native language rather than in English, this is not the right school for you. Third, because I regard learning as a sacred endeavor, everything in this school will reflect learning's elevated status. This means, among other things, that you and your teachers will dress accordingly. There will be a dress code at this school, and you will address all teachers by their title, not by their first name. They are your teachers, not your pals. Fourth, no obscene language will be tolerated anywhere on this school's property. By obscene language, I mean the words banned on radio and television, plus epithets such as the B word, even when addressed by one girl to another, or the N word, even when used by one black student to another. It is my intent that by the time you leave this school, you will be among the few your age to distinguish between the elevated and the degraded, the holy and the obscene. Fifth, we will end all self-esteem programs. In this school, self-esteem will be attained in only one way, the only way self-esteem can be attained, by earning it. One immediate consequence is that graduating classes will have one valedictorian, not 8. Sixth and last, I am reorienting the school toward academics and away from politics and propaganda. No more time will be devoted to racism, sexism, Islamophobia, homophobia, global warming, tobacco, or gender identity. No more classes will be devoted to condom wearing and teaching you to regard sexual relations as no more than a health issue. And there will be no more attempts to convince you that you are a victim because you are not white or male or heterosexual or Christian. This school will have failed if any of you graduate without considering him or herself inordinately lucky. Lucky to be alive and lucky to be an American. Now, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. As many of you do not know the words, your teachers will hand them out to you. I'm Dennis Prager.
To me with the video. I appreciate it because I think it highlights the difference in a way that I wouldn't be able to get to because I often get distracted and can't keep on point. But when when the board received this letter from a former student, and if we can pull the letter up, it was riddled with identity politics, very similar to 2016. When we were charged with, what I had mentioned before. It's a dangerous time. We really have a choice between liberty and tyranny. And what we teach really, really matters, which is why the Hillsdale program was so important because it elevated education for our students. It didn't tie them to their skin color or to their sexual orientation or any of the other identity politics that are used. But here we are, and we're seeing it every time we turn on our TV, and it's concerning because we already had a Black Lives Matter lecture on our campus, and that was unbeknownst to the principal at the time. It was unbeknownst to the superintendent at the time or myself as board
Are
president.
you saying unannounced or unbeknownst?
Unbeknownst, we did not know. There was no permission given.
So unbeknownst?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, it sounded like you were saying unannounced.
No, not unannounced, unbeknownst.
Announced.
So my concern is, in light of the Black Lives Matter protests that we had here in Havasu and how popular this is, with the websites that I do have in my action item, the NEA, the School Counselor Association, and the PTA, that it would be important for us to discuss this as a board, and so the public knew to keep a watchful eye, because this has not been approved by our board. It should not be taught in our schools, especially parents that have students in high school. It's not a good thing to teach students, as the 1619 Project does, that we were founded not as a democracy, but as a slaveocracy. Black Lives Matter doesn't speak for all Black people. And I have a whole boatload of books here that say otherwise. One of the people I admire most, Thomas Sowell, I know people have seen me wear this shirt before. These people operate on an intellectual diversity of the intellect, and that's what we're not doing. We're not celebrating those that depart from the narrative. You're either the oppressed or the oppressor, and there seems to be nothing in between. And so it's interesting now that I'm seeing on Tucker Carlson and I'm hearing on talk radio about critical race theory, my teacher taught me about well. And that teaches our students to see race everywhere they look. They see race and racism. And it's simply not true at all. There are racists in every community in this country, but that is not how our society operates anymore. And the idea that we're going to teach our children that that is in fact how our society operates seems to me like destructive to their mental health and to their soul. And
So for the purposes of this meeting, can you tell us what specifically you would like so that we can make a motion on that?
I was pretty
and then move to
specific in my
discussion?
recommendation.
Please read that.
So I respectfully recommend that all stakeholders view the documentary film Uncle Tom at uncletom.com, released June 19th of 2020, directed by Justin Malone and executive produced by Larry Elder. The Black Lives Movement does not speak on behalf of Black people, and with the stated goal of defunding, and Black Lives Matter LLC runs completely counter to the values of America's founding. Any organization with a stated goal of defunding our police or disrupting the nuclear family structure should be rebuked in the strongest terms. In addition, I recommend Lake Havasu Unified number 1, governing board members disallow any Black Lives Matter or anti-racism curriculum in any of our schools or classrooms, as it does not meet the criteria we have clearly and precisely laid out in our board policy AD, which is our mission, ADE, which is our definitions, or IA, which is our curriculum philosophy. And further, it does not foster development in critical thinking, logic, reason, or worldviews. However, it does highlight how our children are being used as pawns in a spiritual and political war over their hearts and minds. I do not consent. So
Do I have a
Can I
motion?
please?
No.
I have one more.
You are out of order.
Unbelievable.
Do I have a motion on item 6.1?
I have spoke with
Do I have a motion
I'm
on
not
item
done.
6.1? You have read your recommendation.
I have not
Do I have a motion on item 6.1?
Dr. Stone, I just want to let you know that I have spoke with the executive, the co-writer, Ryder Ansel, whose mother happens to live here in Havasu, of Uncle Tom, and they have been willing to allow us to use this in our schools, and I'm going to give this to you. I'm going to forward.
That's wonderful. You can bring that up during the discussion. Do I have a motion on item 6.1? Will you make a motion on your own agenda item? You can if you'd like to.
Yes, I move that we disallow any Black Lives Matter or anti-racism curriculum in any of our schools or classrooms as it does not meet the criteria we've clearly and precisely laid out in our board policies.
Do I have a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. I will present a different motion on item 6.1. It is my understanding that we have some curriculum standards being upgraded and reevaluated, and that process was already in the works. And I would like to postpone this discussion until we have a specific curriculum item to review.
Is that a motion?
That is my motion.
Well, I'll second.
That's fine, and then we can go to discussion. It might fail
Motion.
anyway. You can,
But, okay, may I say something?
Yes.
About why I'm seconding it? I don't understand any of this. We're not teaching Black Lives Matter. We're not teaching the 1619 project. I checked with the department chair at the high school. It's not even under discussion. There are no materials whatsoever at the high school. It's just a moot point right now. Normally, what we do before the board, we go through a curriculum process, a textbook adoption, materials adoption, and it's presented to the board to approve or not to approve, not to disallow it before there's anything to present. So I'm just confused, and as we talked about right now, we have so many problems to try to solve in the school district. I mean, they're almost not solvable, and I don't see solutions here. Mr. Schnorr, if you wanted to meet with me and we'll go over, I would love some help.
I believe on this topic, our superintendent might have something that she could lend that would focus our discussion.
Okay, I'm just very puzzled why 6.1 was even on the agenda, and whatever yours is and fits in, fine, but this whole thing is a puzzlement to me.
So I will try to clarify here. I believe what Mrs. Cohen is trying to share is that she wants to ensure that we do not put either Black Lives Matter curriculum, the 1619 project curriculum, or any other anti-racism curriculum into our schools. I believe what Mrs. Bromont is saying is that we do have a process for how we bring curriculum to the board and how it is voted on. This, I don't know if it was the specific board, but I know the board has created a very clear policy for instructional goals and objectives, as well as the mission statement and the district philosophy definitions. All of those speak to what we want our students to learn and what we want them to be exposed to. One of the things is very clear is that our role is to teach students to think critically about history, about what's happening in their world. We do teach them what to think or how to think, but not what to think. And I think that's the concern, is that we don't try to start teaching them what to think, but rather how to think. Everyone's been clear that schools cannot replace the family's role in raising their children. We don't want to cross that line or be providing that type of information. So what we've said is that our curriculum features high academic standards so that students become critical thinkers and problem solvers using knowledge, reason, and logic. Critical thinkers have the ability to discern truth by analyzing competing truth claims and propaganda, as well as problem solve by analyzing problems using the knowledge, information, and skills they have acquired. And critical thinkers think in complex ways, develop original thoughts and arguments, and are able to make distinctions and are not subject to bias or influence. They are self-directing and decisive. So to that end, this year, last year, the ELA group of teachers worked through developing their essential standards, then determining what does mastery look like with those essential standards. From there, they moved to, okay, so what resources or curriculum support that? This year, our social studies, science, and math teams are doing the same. They started the process in the summer, and currently they've developed a list of what essential standards they believe are important that we will be teaching our students. That process will be moving forward, in which they will determine, okay, so what does mastery look like for each of those standards? And our parents will be made aware of that. They will have that information. And then as a curriculum team, they will meet, and I will pass this over to Mr. Gardner in just a second to share what happens when they want to look at a specific curriculum or a resource. There are two different processes there, but both do come to the board for approval. So I'll let Mr. Gardner share a little more about that.
Jesse? There we go. So just want to make sure everyone understands that the standards are adopted at the state level, and that has the opportunity for people to have public comment on those standards. And standards are basically the skills and knowledge and what students should learn, understand, and be able to do at the end of a grade. The curriculum is basically the resources that are used to help students learn the standards. We have a protocol and obviously policies in place for when a committee convenes and they recommend a particular resource. That information is then shared with the school board, and the curricula is adopted and controlled at the local level. So we again make those decisions. Teachers are involved in the decisions and their recommendations, because obviously they're the ones that are going to be providing the instruction that will help students learn those standards. I oversee the curriculum and the adoption process. If it's a textbook or a resource that requires review, it is on display for public comment for 60 days at the district office, and we usually post that information on our website. And that process will always be honored and followed. The most recent adoption we had was 2 years ago, and we're in our second year, was the adoption of a math curriculum called Singapore Math. And that's the most recent example I could share with you. And again, we had public comment on that. Teachers were involved in the recommendation, they were involved in committees, and they reviewed that. So that's the process, and we will always honor that.
Mr. Gardner, if I may, has anyone specifically recommended to you that we use Project 1619 in our schools?
No one has recommended this item or discussed it with me. I do have information about what it is, but we're not pursuing that, or if it came to light in our community, obviously we would have those discussions in public.
So no one, no superintendent, no one from our directors, no board member, no teacher, no principal has approached you about Project 1619?
No.
Okay. What about any curriculum that is associated with Black Lives Matter? Have you been approached by our superintendent, by any of your fellow directors, principal, teacher, anyone suggesting that we adopt any of those types of materials?
No, that hasn't been brought to my attention.
Okay. So I just want our audience and our press and our members who are viewing to understand that point of it, that we are talking about something that has not even been presented to our board as something that we ought to use in our schools.
Except it was. It's in your board packet. It's a letter from a former student.
She does not address Project 1619.
No, but she does address specifically Black Lives Matter, and she does specifically address anti-racism, curriculum, which Project 1619 is.
But this was 8 years after she had graduated that she wrote the letter. I mean, it's not something that's going on right now.
No, she's asking us to do this. She's saying in order, it says, her letter says, we recognize that supplementing Arizona's curriculum standards is no small task, and doing so is not a task that can be solved overnight.
What was
Yet-
the date of the letter? I don't see a date on the letter. May 25th? Did you say May 25th?
And she
Yes.
signs it on behalf of sincerely Lake Havasu Unified alumni, current students, current and former educators, parents, and community members of Lake Havasu City. And then attached was a petition that was signed. So she is asking for four very specific things for us to do to prove that we're not a racist district.
Well, that hasn't gotten very far.
Well, that's where we're at. That's why I'm discussing this. That's why I brought it up, because it is very specific.
I don't know why we just didn't discuss the letter,
Well, we could have, although,
or we could have sorted it out before it came to this level. It didn't need to. It was just,
I really think best practice when we're talking about what curriculums we want to use in our schools is the process that our superintendent has already laid out and Mr. Gardner has already discussed, where we have a specific program. It sounds like you are working with social studies teachers and for this year also science and math. Okay, so working with the teachers, maybe working with the principals as well. Okay, to discuss what would be appropriate for our students. And then bringing that to the board. Those materials then become, they're displayed in our boardroom for, I believe it's 3 months. Is there a 90-day, 60? 60-day viewing period so that members of the public can come and see what will be taught to their students. And then we vote as a board to approve or not approve. I do feel like that's the better process. I know we've kind of talked about this before on other subjects. I am not in favor of banning materials sight unseen. The materials that you're discussing have not been recommended nor approved by anyone on our board, by any of our directors or our superintendent. And I would much rather go through our already accepted process of approving materials that we've seen and had a chance to look at, rather than making sort of blanket preemptive strikes against things that we have not viewed. That is my own personal preference. That's why I made the motion that I did.
So I would just like,
yes, go ahead.
I would like to point out that this anti-racism curriculum, including 1619, violates our current curriculum adoption because it advocates ethnic solidarity instead of treatment of students as individuals.
Again, that hasn't been presented to our board for adoption. 1619 has not
So
been
are we
presented
not
to our
going
board.
to address this letter in the room, because it's pretty clear, and you signed the letter, so you support it, and maybe that's why you're pushing back so hard, because your name is on this petition.
I did sign the petition.
I know you did.
I would like to tell you why I signed the petition. I read this online. To me, I viewed this and still view it as more or less customer feedback. So I understand that this is an emotionally volatile subject, but I ask you to think about what you would do if a former student came back and said, you know, I took a biology class and we never covered the Krebs cycle, or I took a math class and we didn't learn about factoring polynomials. If someone came back and said, I recognize and identify these deficits in my education and I ask you to consider filling in those gaps, I would at least want to listen and look at what that person had to say. Doesn't mean that I would agree with everything. Maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I would come to the exact opposite conclusion. But to me, a letter like this merits at least a look and a listen. And that's what I take this as. I take this as a student saying, you know, I went off to college and my professors expected me to be conversant on a number of topics, and I wasn't. And I would like our schools to think about maybe filling in some of those gaps. Now, it just so happens that our school is already doing that and thinking about ways to identify unmet needs and possibly fill those in if those needs exist. Again, not committing to taking any action, but signing the petition signaled I would at least be willing to listen to what you have to say.
As far as the letter itself goes, the issue that I have, I would reframe it differently. Instead of, I would not want to teach anti-racism as part of the school district curriculum, because that immediately gets people on the defensive. They're not going to listen because no one thinks that he or she is a racist. So I think that's not the right term. But I do think, having gone to school and grown up in Louisiana, I remember in fifth grade reading the fifth grade American history explanation of slavery, which was the slaves loved their masters and they were so glad for the free food and their houses. Well, I took that as the word. What I would say, if we're going to do anything, if we're leaving anything out, I think we don't do a good job of teaching the history of slavery. I don't think we have. And if anybody starts with how it started thousands of years ago, and it's gone on for thousands of years, and it got to, not even the United States, we weren't a country then, Virginia was a colony. And the slaves were brought there, how they were jerked away from their parents, stolen, the horrible trips on the ships over, the lives of the people here. Anyone who learns the history of slavery, it's horrifying, and you understand a lot. And I think, too, it's kind of odd, tonight, let's say it's ironic, that we're talking about the year 1619 tonight, which is the year that all these years later, 400 years later, Black Lives Matter is a result of that. Whether you agree with it, whether you have sympathy with it, whether you think you're horrified about it, doesn't matter. One thing caused the other. And those are the kinds of things students need to think about, not what's right, not to agree with me, but I know many students get out of high school, and unless they go to college, they've never heard of the Holocaust, they've never heard of Hitler, they don't know how Hitler came to power because they've never heard of him. Those are the kinds of things, what is human nature capable of, the best and the worst. And I think students need to be exposed to that as part of American history, it's part of world history, and I think we do ourselves and our society a great injustice by not examining those things more.
Well, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
I would like to, I'd like to move on to our public response, but Mrs. Aliar hasn't had a chance to say anything. I at least wanted to give you a chance.
I just feel this is too premature. Once we have the suggested curriculum, books and other materials from our staff, teachers, everyone, I think we do get to decide whether it's okay or not okay, and that would be the appropriate time to discuss what's on the table. We can't discuss an abstract like this not knowing in what format it's going to be taught or not going to be taught or what it's going to do. I personally feel we should just leave it to look at what we have, the actual materials, and go from there.
I just want to make the point that it's always about how it was presented, or it's not the right time. This is what we ran into with sex ed. And it was being taught in our schools for 15 years, and we did not know, okay? So we need to talk about slavery. The Hillsdale program starts talking about it in first grade, but we don't need to talk about it and use Black Lives Matter as something to look up to. I mean, our kids are looking at TV. They're looking at these riots that are taking place on TV. They're looking at policemen being shot in the head and Black Lives Matter celebrating it. I was very uncomfortable when I went to our own Black Lives Matter rally and saw staff there. And I said, I'm surprised to see you here. And the response I got was, we're here to support our kiddos. And I was like, these are our students? Yes. I said, do they know what they're supporting? What do you mean? Well, if you go to the front page of Black Lives Matter website, it says defund the police. Oh no, that's not what they mean. So we need to be very clear. This is a coast-to-coast thing that's taking place. And I think that everybody agrees with the sentiment that Black Lives Matter, but I'm just going to say all Black Lives Matter. Black lives that don't agree with the 1619 narrative that has been created, which has been shot down, by the way, on both sides of the aisle from historians as totally factually incorrect.
And again, it has not been presented to our board for approval.
No, it has not, but it is in all 50 states as a curriculum. And just because it hasn't been formally approved by our board doesn't give me a whole lot of solace when we've already had Black Lives Matter lecture on our campus, when we have teachers that are sympathetic to the sentiment. Maybe they don't understand the movement. I'm here to make it very clear that that is a Marxist organization, and they do not speak for Black lives, and it should be nowhere near our students.
Well, that is just one organization and one concept. And
It's
there
one
are a
big
million
organization.
There are a million things we could take up that are wrong in the country right now, so let's not even go there.
Yeah, but
because
that's
not our
dominating.
business. No, it's nothing. It's nothing.
It's dominating our news cycle. You cannot turn on a news TV.
Everything is dominating your news cycle. Different things dominate my news cycle. Nicole, we have agreed that.
Well, where do you get your news?
It
I
doesn't
certainly
matter
don't
what.
get it from where you get it, but that's not the point. The point is that we will, I don't think that I'm ready to discuss something in the abstract. If you want to bring up
That's
all the
okay.
world issues, let's bring them up. Let's
I'll
talk
be gone
about
in 3
climate
months,
We
and
are-
I've
we are
done the
going to limit
work,
this
and now it's up
discussion.
to everybody who's
We are
watching.
going to limit this discussion to board business only. I would like to go ahead and move on to our public commentary. If you would like to come, we do have a 3-minute time limit, and please state your name. The other thing I want to say is for reading emails, I know we have had a number of emails come in, more than, I believe the last number I heard was 70 emails. We are not going to read those emails at this meeting. We can do two things, and I'd like a consensus from our board. We can either, our board secretary has expressed some willingness to copy and paste all of these to our minutes, but it would be a lot. It's very time consuming. What I suggested was maybe we just say on a first come, first served basis, the first 25 get copied and pasted into our board minutes and become a part of the public record as a representative of all of the emails that were sent in. What does our board think? Would that be an acceptable practice? It is asking her a lot to copy and paste 70 plus emails into our board minutes.
I'm fine with that.
Maybe it would just be easier to have a mailbox that we could go read them in. We could, instead of having one person copy and paste it, maybe the board could have access to that email.
Like a Dropbox
Yeah.
kind of a thing?
Yeah.
What do you think? Is that doable?
I'm sure tech would be able to help you with that.
Okay. We will work on it. We will find a way to make it a matter of public record, but I'm sure you understand that we are constrained by practical limits. Okay, who was first?
Thank you, Madam President and board members. I'm Sonny Borelli. I'm your state senator for Legislative District 5. I'm also on the Education Committee in the state Senate. I'm all the Senate Majority Whip, so I have a lot of different hats I wear down there. Member Cohen, I want to salute you for bringing this forward. You're right, this is not up on your plate right now, but it's coming. It's coming from the state. Mr. Gardner's right. These curriculums come down from the state. It comes down from the superintendent. And by the way, there are forces that are pushing this on her agenda. And it's part of her platform since the beginning when she did run for superintendent. Just like last year when the comprehensive sex education thing came up, we had to literally run legislation to try to stop that. When you literally looked at some of the material that was going to be presented in some of these classrooms, it was pornography. But by the time we find out about it, it was already in some of the schools. This is being pushed. The 1619 project is being pushed. So is the Black Lives Matter narrative. Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization that has one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to overthrow the government. This government. They don't hide it. It's on their website. It's in all their paraphernalia. all their propaganda. They boast about being trained Marxists, and that's their sole purpose, is to defund the police and take over the entire education system and a whole laundry list of things. Break down the nuclear family. They want to replace you parents through the education system, through indoctrination. This is not the black helicopter kind of stuff. Nicole Cohen is 100% accurate, correct. This is coming. I'm at the state capitol. I see what's going on with my Democrat colleagues. I know what goes on behind the scenes. Senator Quesada, who is a board member of on the school board in Phoenix, he was pushing the comprehensive sex education and a bunch of other things through the back door through the superintendent. So this is coming. So I salute you. Have this conversation and do your research. As teachers, educators, you encourage your students to do your homework. I suggest you do your homework, because this agenda that is being pushed, it's not healthy. It's not healthy for the individual. It's not healthy for this country. And it is definitely not healthy for this community or this school. You had conservatives that pushed through bonds and overrides, and we got it done successfully, and we want our schools to flourish. So once again, do your homework and start digging into this, because this is coming. And if you prepare now, you can push back on it when it comes back from the state. And it's going to come not through legislation. It's going to come down through other edicts. And, okay, I'm done. Am I done? Thank you very much, and improve your net and hire vet.
Hi, my name is Justin Pulaski. Thank you for your time. I'd like to address the 6.2, even though I believe that most of this will fall on deaf ears. And pardon the presentation. I am just a truck driver, after all. There is no proof that systemic racism even exists in today's age. The last actual example of racism in modern society ended with the outlawing of the Red Light program in 1968. Every American today is born with the same equity of opportunity, and it is up to the content of one's character to steer the outcome. It is your duty to reflect the general consensus of your constituents, not that of one whining former student with anonymous support that lacks the grit and the tools necessary to negotiate normal adult life. Her parents were the ones that failed to enrich the tools that failed her. And it does not reflect the need to change an entire community. I refuse to have my children indoctrinated by an anarcho-communist agenda that focused on dismantling the greatest society in the history of our planet, one that has revolutionized and modernized the planet Earth as we know it today. Instead of focusing on leftist political agendas, maybe we should be focused on the facts that we have an embarrassing record of some of our schools in our community, such as Lake Havasu High School, Oro Grande Elementary, and Nautilus Elementary, all of which have subpar ratings and are an embarrassment to our community. Thank you for your time.
First of all, I wanted to thank Nicole Cohen for bringing this issue up as a member of your board. My name's Diane Klostermeyer, and I, as a mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother, and resident of Lake Havasu City and voter, am here to vehemently protest using the 1619 project curriculum and some of the Black Lives Matter issues. It provides a false history for the students in our schools. This program has no basis in fact and provides fallacious material, teaches students an erroneous concept of the formation of our country, the motives and beliefs of our founding fathers, and our United States Constitution, while at the same time inculcating a concept that all white people are racist and privileged. Look at the 1619 project. Read it. Go online, please. For heaven's sakes. It wrongfully teaches that America was founded on slaveocracy, as Nicole Cohen had mentioned. And the current racial inequities are the natural outgrowth of those. Is that true? This has no place in our classroom. I believe that most parents and residents feel that as I do, that it's an outrageous concept that is currently being included If it's included in our history classes now, it should be stopped, and teachers should prevent it from using it in our educational system in all our schools in Lake Havasu City. They have not been authorized to do this. Our students have been taught the true history originally in our classrooms and the formation of this great nation of ours. It's popularly understood that our country was established by great men who are seen as heroic figures who fought to create the nation and our Constitution. They have verifiable historical information. Look it up. They have convention meetings, the Federalist Papers, numerous individual writings of the Founding Fathers that demonstrate their views and their many sacrifices. Their writings demonstrate their love of God and country, whereby they risked their lives, their fortunes, and even their sacred honor in order to establish liberty and this wonderful country of ours that guarantees the rights and freedoms we all enjoy. The kids need to feel this feeling and pride in our community. The true history covers the founding era via rhetoric and documents of the founders, including the Declaration of Independence, declaring that all men are created equal. The Revolutionary War, including what America stands for since its founding, and the Civil War, where several 100,000 white and black Americans fought together and they died together in order to keep our country free from slavery. Our Constitution's 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments clearly cover anti-slavery, citizenship, and voting rights. This is what the kids need to learn. Our students should be proud of our nation. They should be taught love of God and country. Of course, you know I'm a member of PACE, where we try to teach them this, to respect our history, our founding fathers, our heritage, our ideals and values. They should want to emulate the virtues of the founders and to seek to do their part to benefit this great nation of ours. History education should include the 3 R's of good citizenship, which includes responsibility, respect, and reverence. They should be taught the true history that demonstrates that our United States has been the most generous and has sacrificed more, including giving even the lives in defense of freedom.
Mrs.
whole
Klostermeyer,
world.
I would ask you to wrap up your comments. Your time is up.
I'm sorry, I have one more paragraph,
Okay.
if I may say it.
Well, your time is up.
Sadly, they are being taught this in some schools, these 1619 projects, and some students have been demonstrating and wrongfully chosen to riot, destroy property, disregard for human life and rights, and advocate the destruction of our country as it stands.
I'm going to have to ask you to
Therefore,
stop.
I'm just going to finish the paragraph. Therefore, I respectfully request that our students in Lake Havasu City be taught the true history of our country. You are the guardians of our school curriculum. You are elected to provide true history of our nation for our children and to prevent the perversion of it. James Madison, one of the founding fathers.
Mrs. Klostermeyer, your time is up
A
now.
well-instructed
No, you may
people
sit down,
alone
Mrs.
can
Klostermeyer.
permanently
Mrs.
provide a free
Klostermeyer,
people.
your time is up.
Let me
Your
finish the
time has
last
been up
sentence,
for several
please.
minutes. Please have a seat.
Many
Your
men
time is
have
up.
risked their
You have
lives
had your
to
allotted
preserve
3
or
minutes
defend
and
our
then some. Please
Constitution.
have a seat.
Please don't let their sacrifices and those of our founders be in vain. Our nation.
Mrs. Klostermeyer,
future
your time
depends on
has
it.
expired.
Our future depends on it, and if you turn us down,
Point of order, you are out of order. Please have a seat. Your time has expired.
I know
Thank
it's a
you for
point
your
of order,
comment.
but you know what? It's a point of disorder if you allow this disgraceful program to go in. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Frankie Lyons. I'm with Veterans United Arizona. And with the type of people that we have in this city, the racism is not there. And for some of the flippant answers I've heard from you people is a disgrace to these kids. You're supposed to be their heroes. You're supposed to be their guardian. And to say, oh, well, let's wait till later, that's like a pinprick in a balloon. Let's wait until it's totally out of air before you do something about it. These kids need your support now. They don't need to wait till later on when there's nothing can be done about it. The BLM is a racist, socialist, Marxist group. If you look it up, it has nothing to do with slavery. They want to take over you. They want to take over our kids and our country. And it's just not right. You have a decision when it comes up to know ahead of time that it's your responsibility to bring these kids up in a positive, together group. Thank you.
I thought it was interesting when the letter was posted on Facebook and the Google letter for everybody to sign, and I actually saw it, and I actually took some screenshots of a number of the people that signed it, and including President Rahman. I saw yours, and I knew that you had signed it, and I was surprised by the comment that you made earlier about the reason why you signed it, because I remembered when you signed it, you actually apologized later for signing it. So I was kind of curious as to why you would apologize for it. That's a little bit contradictory from what you said previously, but
Point of fact,
I'll
I did not
digress for that.
apologize.
Interestingly, I went back and I looked at the 2019 National Education Association adoptions. And so the adoptions that the NEA does are the things that they're going to support. So 2019 was before George Floyd, before the Black Lives Matter riots and everything that happened, and before this letter was actually written. And I think it's interesting for you to understand that our Arizona Education Association endorses and supports the NEA, and all you have to do is go onto the AEA website and you'll see a link to the NEA on there. So there is a connection between there. And remember that all of the AEA and the NEA, they have their meetings and they come together to decide what they're going to support and what kind of a curriculum they're going to come together. So keep in mind, what I'm reading from are the endorsed adoptions and the votes that were done in 2019. And just to give you a little context, one of them, now mind you, what they voted against was a pursuit of increasing student learning. That was voted down. But what was voted on was to adopt the white fragility agenda, which was written by Robin DiAngelo, and it was a book called Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism. That was adopted in 2019. Another item that was adopted was ethnic studies to dismantle institutional racism. There was another one that was adopted called Promote Black Lives Matter Week Action, where there were 4 demands that were made, that there was going to be a Black Lives Matter week in every high school in the state, in the United States, according to the NEA, and they were going to endorse Black Lives Matter week of action. And the last one, and there were some other ones, but one of them that really kind of hurt my heart was the NEA endorsed abortion, supporting abortion. And we know that there are more than 2 million black babies that are aborted every single year. So for the NEA to support these things in 2019, and now we're at a place now where BLM is talking about, and in this letter, and on the Facebook page and the Google, it said, and it gave a list of no less than 15 different books and, funding, all kinds of different organizations. But if you go back and you look at Cami Saltero's website or her Facebook page, you can see the things that she's trying to promote. And I really think that our community needs to be prepared for that. And I really think our school board needs to be more enlightened about it.
Just as a point of fact, I do want to refute one statement that you said. I did not apologize for signing that letter. I would like you to furnish me with proof. I do not appreciate being lied about and to during this meeting, and I did not apologize for that letter. Then send me some proof, please. Next speaker, please.
Okay, I'd like to thank Sonny and Borelli for coming here. I'm glad we got someone here to kind of go on Nicole Cohen's side. I feel like this board is a 3-to-1 right now. And just like you said, this subject hasn't been brought to your guys' attention, but Borelli just said it's coming. The time is coming. It's very political. And it seems like it's a 3-to-1 on this board. So if this does come to our board, I think this community is trying to get it towards in front of you guys to let you know what this really is. Do your research on it. Don't vote political. Do your research, because the research is there no matter what side you're on. And if you guys stick to, obviously you're 3-to-1, what you're going on, this could be in our schools. It's not presented in front of you yet, but if the time comes, I think that's what we're worried about. We're worried about where this can go, and this is why it was brought forward. Now, with the senator being here, he's got some clout. Listen to it. Do your research. Listen to what he's trying to tell you guys. If it's coming in, it's coming in. You wanted to not listen to Nicole, but we have a senator here, so we got some backing up going on. Please listen to what these people are saying and do your research. And if this is presented to you guys at the time, if it does come forward as curriculum, do your research on it and see what it's about, and go from there. That's all I got to say.
What's the name?
Hi. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate...
I'm sorry, can you state your name?
My name is Kenya Ladislas, and I really appreciate all the members of the board. I appreciate the job that you do. Mrs. Cohn, though I don't agree with the word you say, I love your passion, and I believe that your heart is in everything you do. But for everyone here, I'd just like to encourage you to really have listened to what Mr. Gardner said about how curriculum is adopted. I'm an English teacher here at the high school. We spent hours and hours going through what would be part of the curriculum, and that gets recommended to the board and they approve it. The last thing that I teach, the most recent novel, is 1984 and Lord of the Flies. I don't teach anything written after 1960. And so the fear that is like sort of being perpetuated is that the curriculum that's being adopted is coming down from the state, and that it's all part of this very leftist, Marxist movement, when it's really not. And so it's your teachers, and then what we discuss is then approved by your board after it is put up by review by the entire community. So rather than living in fear, and rather than making this into another way to divide us as a community, please pay attention to the actual process. And I think that that will make you a little bit more reassured and a little bit less fearful about people and their motivations and the process. Okay, because nothing is being hidden from you, and it is not a big push. Like I said, the last thing I teach is written in 1954. So there's no Black Lives Matter in the British literature curriculum. And for American Lit, I also teach that this year, and we don't have anything written after 1960. So just know that that is the truth as opposed to the fear. And so we can't spend all of our time trying to outlaw whatever may come down the pipes. There's no end to that. Being a negative something that isn't even a possibility yet is we'll spend time doing nothing else. So don't live in fear. It's not what you think it is, and you will have a chance as the community to review what we do. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you. Any other speakers from the public? Please.
Good evening. My name is Fred Moen. I'm a citizen here in Lake Havasu. I'd just like to mention, there are a lot of things that you've been talking about that may occur, but understand that we don't teach certain subjects because they're repulsive. One of them is like eugenics. We don't teach that. We don't teach Mein Kampf. We don't teach things of that sort to our students. And when you do, and you'll get information about this. Just remember, being open-minded doesn't mean you have a hole in your head. It means that you think about the actual results and the historic background and critically evaluate it. Because things like the 1619 project is not accurate, and it creates problems rather than educate. Thank you.
Anyone else?
So can I just encourage the board to maybe do a little research on critical race theory? This is what is behind what's being pushed at all levels of our government and our school system, public schools, coast to coast. And then maybe just a little review of the Hillsdale scope and sequence, kindergarten through 12th grade. I think that should be the model that this community would overwhelmingly support. And it does teach both sides, good and bad. And that's important and appropriate. So anyways, yeah, I would love it if the board would do some more research on it. I'm sure this will come around after I'm off the board, but I just wanted to make sure that we were just really upfront about, it's happening. It might not be happening here yet, but we could be proactive instead of reactive. And our kids are certainly witnessing it, and they've got questions, so we might not want to wait too long to address it.
Well, and it may be the case when Mr. Gardner meets with some of the teachers, it may be the case that certain materials presented by Hillsdale are appropriate, that we would like to incorporate at some of the higher grades. I'm certainly not ruling any of those things out. I don't want to restate my position, but as I said, I don't want to make blanket statements about what is and isn't okay for our schools. I'd rather see specific materials and make a decision on those specific materials once I've had a chance to review them.
I understand that. But again, this action item, I just want to point out, A, B, and C, these are not one-offs. These are substantial organizations in education, and this is what is on. I mean, the links are there. That's a great place to start your research. So it's like, we can't say, well, we're not doing it in our schools. I appreciate the comment that the teacher made. I didn't catch her name, but I'm not trying to put fear. That's what this critical race theory does, is it induces this fear. But this is what's being highlighted in these organizations, up to and including, I hate to say it, Educators Rising, but I'll leave it at that. We're supposed to judge people by their individual character. And our whole country was founded, on that premise of e pluribus unum, out of many, one, United States. We're all privileged to be American. That is the message that our kids deserve. So I'll leave it at that. I know we have other things on the agenda.
Do we have any other sort of final thoughts from our board members? I have one, if not. So when it comes to thinking about what I would like to be taught in our schools, I think about what we do for our legal system. And in our legal system, when we have someone testifying in court, we require them as witnesses to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And we do that because we recognize in our country that in order for justice to be served, a jury has to be aware of the entire record of vital facts before it renders its verdict. And if that's the standard that we have for our courtrooms, that is also the standard that we should have for our classrooms. We should make sure that our children are receiving as much of the whole truth as humanly possible. I understand that history spans hundreds and actually thousands of years, and so it's impossible to go into minute detail. But we also should be careful not to gloss over important events. We should be careful not to overly soften them. We should be as close to telling the whole truth as possible. While neither guilt nor shame should be a part of our social studies curriculum, I do believe that facts and context should be a part of our social studies curriculum. And I favor giving students as much of an informative background as possible. That's where I stand on this issue.
Intersectionality, that's another one to research too.
I'll add that to my list.
Intersectionality.
Okay.
And Prager University is a great place to do some research too. I mean, they've got a video for every hot button topic that's out there. So
just to review, our motion is to postpone this topic until we have specific materials to review. Are we ready to vote?
I don't see the point of voting on that. I mean, if something comes up, we're going to review it anyway. I don't think this topic is something we should take up. Why don't we take up all the world issues then? We can't just take one topic and say, okay, we're going to review this, so everything we read in the curricula is going to be based on this one fact. No, I have to look at lots of different things in the curricula that we are presented with. And I don't think that this has to be anything. I don't think this is something we should talk about.
So this is a discussion item, so we could just simply, I could withdraw my motion, we could just move to closed discussion, if that is appropriate. Okay, then I will withdraw my motion. Kathy, I believe you second it?
I will withdraw my second.
Okay. Would you like to propose the motion to close discussion?
Sure. I propose that we end this discussion.
Do I have a second?
I second it. Okay. Let's just follow the curriculum procedure that's already in place.
Yes. Nothing else we need.
We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We already have a procedure.
I think we're ready to vote.
Nicole Cohen?
No.
Kathy Cox?
Yes.
Archana Allier?
Yes.
Lisa Ramon?
Yes. Item 6.3 is the approval of amendment to agreement between Western Arizona Vocational Education District Number 50 and Lake Havasu Unified School District Number 1. This is presented by Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. It is recommended the governing board approve the Fourth Amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between Lake Havasu Unified School District Number 1 and Western Arizona Vocational Education District Number 50. The purpose of the agreement is to establish terms and conditions under which WAVE will provide career technological educational courses at satellite locations in Mojave County, including Lake Havasu Unified School District Number 1. On September 20th, 2016, the Lake Havasu Unified School District Governing Board gave its approval to an intergovernmental agreement between LHUSD and WAVE. The agreement is governed and interpreted by the laws of the state of Arizona and will be effective for a period not to exceed 5 years with annual review. The agreement may be terminated by either party upon written notice to the other parties given no later than 90 days before the end of the semester. An amendment is attached to the board's approval, which will cover the 2020-2021 school year, and the amendment was forwarded to legal counsel and approved as to form.
Do I have a motion on item 6.3?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or questions?
Are there any differences from between this one and the one we signed last year?
Yes, so I did make a note. I do have all 5 copies, so I have the original IGA that was started back in 2016, and I have the 4 amendments here, so I will forward all of these to the board, as I know there are a few members who have not been here along that entire journey. But yes, so Amendment 4 specifically provides clarification in the original document where it says, I guess it's not included up there on the big screen, but Section 4A8 talks about in the original agreement that there is a 55% cap regarding that percentage of these funds for WAVE can be used towards salaries and benefits. That was in the original IGA back in 2016. So in Amendment 4, they clarified what that means. So in Amendment 4, it talks about how that 55% cap for salaries and benefits does not include stipends. So if there is a stipend to be paid to a teacher because of a leadership type position or overseeing a certain group or part of being part of the CTE chair of a certain class, that would not be counted in that 55% cap. So that would fall under the remaining 45% that's used for purchasing equipment, supplies, now stipends, travel, whatever it may be. So they wanted to provide some clarity with that. Also, this kind of has ping-ponged back and forth between a couple different changes from the original IGA in 2016. The original IGA mentioned that payments to the district would be made 7 times in the course of the fiscal year. In Amendment 1, that changed to 4. So now in Amendment 4, that's changing to 5 payments. And the reason behind that, sometimes it has to do with timing with how the state funds its programs. So this allows WAVE some flexibility. It allows them to take the monies that they receive and divide it and pay the district in 5 payments during the year instead of 4, which used to be 7, if you can follow the bouncing ball on that one. And that's basically the reason for the amendment. Also, too, in the previous agreements, there was mention of the CTE bus that WAVE provided for the district. They purchased a bus, reimbursed the district as we made those lease payments over 5 years. That is now removed out of the agreement, not included in Amendment 4, because that bus was paid off this last year, fiscal year 20. So it's no longer in there.
I was happy to see, I saw something on social media about how WAVE has a culinary program, and so they were able to give some of their students basically take-home kits and ask them to prepare meals, and then they were able to conduct some of their training even from home and everything. So I was glad to see that they're kind of finding creative solutions right now to continue to provide education. Any other questions or comments?
Cox?
Yes?
Nicole Cohen?
Yes.
Archana Alliar?
Yes.
Lisa Roman?
Yes. Okay, item 6.5 is the approval of adjacent ways street widening improvements for Lake Havasu High School Athletic Project, and this is Phase 2 along Constellation Drive. And this is presented by Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. It is recommended that the governing board, I mentioned on here pending school facility board approval, which by the way was, they held a special session on September 11th, so they did approve this project. So at the time that this had to be submitted to you as the board, that still was unknown. So literally, we got an email the day before saying that they were holding a special meeting the next day, September 11th, and they did approve this project. So it is recommended the governing board approve the expenditure of adjacent ways funds to Concord Construction for off-site street widening improvements to Constellation Drive, which is just here on the west side of our campus, at an amount not to exceed $80,000. As part of Phase 2 athletic field improvements at LHHS, the city is requiring off-site widening improvements to Constellation Drive. Currently, Constellation Drive is not a full-width 2-lane street. The use of adjacent ways funds will provide street widening as well as curb and sidewalk improvements to bring the street to the city-required standard. As these are off-site improvements and the street and sidewalk are the city property, or will be the city property, future maintenance and improvements will be their responsibility, and the district's purchasing department and legal counsel have reviewed this item.
Do I have a motion on item 6.5?
So, I second.
Discussion or questions?
So we've got a big fund. I'm just going to highlight that because questions that I already asked, because it used to be this was a normal funding source for our district, that we would do it adjacent ways every year, even though we didn't really have projects that we were planning to use it for, and so it kind of built up. What's in the fund?
Yeah, so to Mrs. Cohen's point, to provide some context and historical information with that, at every budget adoption cycle, if the district were to levy for adjacent ways funds, there would be a truth in taxation statement generated. It would be published in the paper to make the citizens aware that the district was levying for additional funds to acquire adjacent ways funding so that we can address ingress, egress, fire lane, anything that fits into those categories. Constellation is a textbook project so that it's really an off-site improvement. It's not a district improvement to our land. It's an improvement to allow the project to come to completion, and then the city again would then maintain that. So adjacent ways, what will happen is that if we decided to levy, like I said, the truth and taxation document would be generated. It'd go out for public comment so they know that that's happening. And then we would then collect those funds based on the amount that we were levying for. Typically, some districts will just put in a blanket dollar amount and let that roll year after year after year, and then this amount just kind of accumulates and is deposited into the Adjacent Ways funds, which happens to be Fund 620. And then what will happen is the taxpayers keep getting taxed, and if we're not spending these monies, then the taxpayers keep getting taxed and we sit on funds. So we stopped that truth in taxation about 3 years ago because we did not have the bond passed, the override passed. We had these projects outlined in our bond that would do more of the on-site improvements. So we stopped the levy because we needed to kind of recommit or regather and reevaluate what we're actually going to use these funds for. And as you can see, we have not, it generated about $600 and some thousand into this fund. And with this project, we had a $9,000 project out here in the high school earlier last year because of a broken water main in a fire lane. So that was an appropriate use of Adjacent Ways funds. But with this project of 80,000-ish, it's actually a little less than that, we'll still have about $550,000 in that fund. And so again, we as a district are committed to trying to have a plan in place before we ask the community for funds and additional taxation to address those needs. So again, we've had a 3-year hiatus on that. We still have over $500,000 there. And at the moment, no real plans to exhaust that anytime soon. So again, when we have to come out to you, the voting public, there will be a plan presented at that time and a rationale as to why we're requesting that additional funding through taxpayer funds. So that was the long version of Mrs. Cohen's.
Thank you for explaining that.
Any additional questions or discussion from our board?
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Archana Alliar,
Yes.
Lisa Roman,
Yes. Item 6.6 is the approval of vouchers, student activity funds, and auxiliary funds, and this is presented by Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. It is recommended the board approve vouchers for June of 2020 and August of 2020. Last month, we presented July's vouchers. There was a lag in presenting June's because of the fiscal year end, and we have an encumbrance period where we have to close our books or get them to where we're no longer expending out of last year's budget. So now June is before the board for approval. And then a note there, student activity funds and auxiliary funds will come to the board at a later date, July and August. I had to add August on my sheet, but it should say July and August because we're still in the process of rolling those fund balances from one fiscal year to the next, and that takes quite some time to make sure that that's accurate when we roll to the new fiscal year. But as soon as that's done, you will see all of those months individually for you to approve.
Do I have a motion on item 6.6?
I move that we approve item 6.6 as presented.
I second.
Further discussion or questions?
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Archana Alliar,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Lisa Roman,
Yes. Okay, on to informational. Do we have any information from our superintendent that he would like to report?
I just have 3 things I would like to share tonight. The first is around the conversation that our board just had. I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the fact that there are passionate parents and grandparents and board members, our senator, and our teachers. So what I want everyone to be confident in is that any time we are requesting approval of any type of curriculum, this will absolutely come before the public. And what I'm asking you is to make sure that you come forward and you give comments and you give your opinion just as passionately as you did tonight about those materials before they go forward. Because while Mr. Gardner and all of our teachers do some significant research before they bring it forward, our board would then also be charged with doing that research, and as well as the public. And we have to take that into consideration before anything is ever approved by our board. So I really hope you will all take the time as we do move any type of curriculum forward. At this time, I do want to reiterate, the 1619 project is not being brought forward for any kind of vote or any kind of approval. But again, as we do have those, I want the public to be confident that we are getting your input and taking that into consideration. The other thing I would like to say, we don't often talk about the positives in gifts to schools are always in the consent agenda, so we don't always see those. While I would be afraid to mention people because I'm afraid I would forget someone, this community is extremely generous to our schools, and the total amount for the month of August was $29,536, which is amazing. And my final thing is really about our elementary teachers. So they started school, they are excited to have kids in their classrooms, but they are also continuing to do distance learning. And just from me, knowing what they are doing right now and knowing they are going well above and beyond what you would normally experience with your kids in the classroom all day, and then you have your evenings to grade your papers and do things like that. They're actually doing over and above. I just want to thank them for all that work and know that our kids are benefiting greatly from all of that. We are meeting tomorrow to really talk about what does it look like when we open our elementary schools fully. What does that support look like for our students who are choosing to stay home? And as we make any kind of changes in that platform or process, that will be communicated directly with those families. So it is just a thank you for all the work they're doing.
Any information from any of our board members? I had a couple of things. I will start out just from the prior business item. I do want to renew my statement that I did not apologize for signing that petition. And if you have proof to the contrary, that accusation was made by a speaker today. If that speaker has proof to the contrary, I would like to be furnished with that proof prior to the end of the business day of Friday, or I would like you to admit that you fabricated that apology. Because it does not exist. I did not issue an apology. On to more pleasant business. I was able to attend the Arizona School Board Association Law Conference last week. One of the items that we talked about that I thought might be something that our board might consider or our schools might consider is talking about digital citizenship. I thought it might be especially timely and appropriate considering the circumstances, just giving kids some education on how to be responsible citizens online. And so I don't have something specific to suggest, but I would like you to know that that's on my radar, and especially if our curriculum director or our superintendent think of something that might be appropriate for our schools, I hope they will bring that forward to the board. And then my last thing, so I wanted to talk about this last meeting, but it just didn't feel like the right time. But our district did lose a teacher who means a lot to our schools and our community, and that is Christy Locatus. Her passing, I'm sorry?
Locatus.
Oh, I'm sorry. Her last name is correctly pronounced Locatus?
Locatus.
Okay, I'm sorry. In any case, I just knew her as Christy, but she was such a bright and energetic and fun person to be around. I did not know her that well, but anytime that I interacted with her, I really enjoyed being around her. I know that, of course, her colleagues and her close friends and her family are grieving her loss, but I was also touched by the number of students that I saw grieving her passing, and I just think it really speaks to the kind of teacher and person that she was, when you have teenagers mourning your loss and recognizing how much you meant to them, that tells me, A, that you were a very good teacher and that you were a very good person. And so she will be missed. I didn't want to leave her unremarked.
I was going to mention something before you started talking.
Okay.
So I just wanted to, in honor of my grandmother, she was a school teacher for 30 years before Starview Elementary. Anyways, she passed away September 3rd. And she did an amazing marionette program with her 6th grade class every year to teach the Constitution. So that's where my passion comes from. Thank you. And she'll be missed a lot. And so I just had this chart that I found in her stuff. And it was a math project, obviously. And it was the class's favorite TV shows in 1989. And The Cosby Show and Webster were the two favorites, with Three's Company and Airwolf and Street Hawk being the least favorites. And I just thought that was really cute. So anyways,
Well,
I just
put
wanted
me
to
down for Webster.
Yeah, everybody loved Webster. But my grandma had bought a book for everybody in the every staff member in the district in 2017 called Passion Driven Education. And I know a lot of people have read the foreword of that book by John Taylor Gatto, but I just wanted to honor her and say something. So that's it.
Mrs. Fleming, did we have any calls to the public come in? No. Okay. Do we have any board suggestions for future agenda items?
No, I can't wait to fight about the digital citizenship.
Okay, and then anything
Lisa,
from our press or?
Lisa, I have
I'm
one
sorry.
question.
Yes.
Not sure if this is an item or what, but can we not ask the city to help us get better internet service in town? Because everyone's having huge problems, and with all the kids, or with many of the kids, or all of them actually, at some time or other learning digitally, there are other cities who have done this because the companies over here are not providing us with it. So as a school district, I don't know if that is something we want to take.
Like we could write a letter to the city possibly?
Yeah,
Okay.
like we could request them to please help us.
Okay, we could put that on the agenda for next month.
Thank you.
Yes.
The problem with, I'm sorry, we're not allowed to talk.
Yes, but if you have information that you would like to share.
The problem with wire free is that they aren't big enough to cater to the whole city, certainly, and also they cannot go certain places. They have a limited service compared to the others. Service areas.
Okay. But yes, we could add that to the agenda for next month. Yes. Okay. And then is anyone from the press here who would like to ask questions? I didn't see anybody. Okay. Well, in that case, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Kathy Cox?
Yes?
Nicole Cohen?
Yes.
Archie Allier?
Yes.
Lisa Roman?
Yes. Meeting is adjourned.